colleagues and friends, I'm more than honored and happy really that something that we've been working on for some time with Professor Babic, whom I'd like to thank really for initiating the whole this event today, that we finally realized the arrival of our today's guest and lecturer, Professor Evangelos Protopapadakis. I have to be precise, you know, and I'm really happy that he's today with us. Hopefully not the last time. I hope that this is really the beginning of some cooperation we already spoke about. Just briefly, he put everything, I mean, for a brief information that you have to know about him. He's coming from National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, where he's teaching applied ethics. And he's also director of a research lab for applied philosophy at the faculty, and also being involved in bioethical issues and debates and so on. He is head of the Greek unit of UNESCO chair in bioethics located in Haifa. So as you see, he's dealing for a very long time with issues of bioethics. And I will take no more time and asking him to take the floor. And Stefan will mediate our today's debate, and of course after that, after initial lecture that is, let me say, more philosophical in the sense idea about euthanasia and right to die based on Kantian approach. After that, I asked him also that during the debate we briefly speak about the, let me say, state of the bioethical issues and debates within the Greek proper. So, Evangelos, thank you very much for coming, and please.
Thank you very much, Misa. To me, it's a great honor, and it sounds an opportunity to be there, for which I'm grateful to my dear friends, dare say, Evangelos Protopapadakis and Mr. Jurkovic. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for thanks to everybody for being here. This will be a traditional lecture. I mean, I'm going to read it out, but at any point you may interrupt and ask whatever crosses your mind, or express any thoughts you have, or any objection, or remark, or anything. I would like also to add that to me, being in Belgrade and in front of the Serbian academia, it's like being home. It feels like being home. I also wish that this collaboration continues, and okay, this is it. Let's start. The topic of my lecture is the right to die. Actually, from that point, I'll start reading out my lecture, my communication. The right to die sounds like a contradictio in terminis to many of us, to me as well, since also why. If everything goes well, I'll say why. The discussion concerning the right to die lies at the core of the moral debate on euthanasia, regardless of types and variants. Nevertheless, it is in respect of voluntary passive euthanasia that it is usually considered the most decisive moral determinant. The right to die among all rights is the most controversial because it necessarily implies that life may, on occasion, be not worth living, or that death may be preferable to life. While the first implication, most of the times, is challenged as violating common sense, I mean the implication that life on occasion is not worth living, being contrary to common experience and constituting a slippery slope, and everybody knows why. We have these genocide incidents in human history, in the history of mankind, which dare to drive our mind to this assumption. The latter is typically rejected as a common logical fallacy, since there is no common scale on which life and death may be compared. Non-existence is simply inaccessible to human experience. So it's quite strange to claim that death is preferable to life, because I know how life is, even burned life. I may have bone cancer and suffer a lot, but still I cannot insist or claim that death is preferable to that kind of existence, because I know how it is to live with cancer, but I don't know how it is to be dead. The this is the how is it called? This is the Epictetus argument concerning the smoky chamber. Epictetus claims that there are some instances our life is like a chamber, a room. From time to time, it gets filled up with smoke, and as much as one can tolerate the smoke, you may stay in, but if the smoke becomes intolerable, you just have to open the door and go out. This is commit suicide. This argument is called the incommensurability argument because it compares a smoky chamber, we know how it is, with the condition outside the chamber, which we don't know how it is. Next to the concerns I already outlined, there is also extensive ambiguity with regard to the classification of such a right, assuming it could be admitted. It is a matter of controversy whether it could be considered a claim or a liberty right, as well as a positive or a negative one. The right to die in general poses major challenges for bioethics, law ethics, and ethics, literally driving human intellect to its limits. To paraphrase Kant's argument against suicide, the right to die puts to challenge the intrinsic value of life, I quote Kant, through the same faculty whose vocation is to impel the furtherance of life. Since if I commit suicide, Kant says that if I decide to commit suicide, I do it out of self-love. But self-love is a motivation, an instinct, a tendency, or let's say a property that nature has inserted in us in order to keep us to life and not to drive us out of life. It is not surprising at all that the endeavor to establish a moral and a legal right to die has been vigorously rejected as undocumented, unsound, barren, and meaningless. While the right to life corresponds to concepts that more or less tend to be readily accepted as suitable to either the human condition or to our moral intuitions or sentiments, so as it requires much effort to be challenged and questioned, at least prima facie, the situation is quite opposite with regard to the right to die. This is only expected since the notion of life and the concept of rights seem to harmoniously interlock, while death seems to be in direct juxtaposition with both. But this couldn't be otherwise. Death is by definition a scandal to reason. To me, it is the other scandal. I mean, the fact that we have to be born and then later die, after a few years die, we don't know why either the first or the latter happens. And scandals can be resolved only by faith, religious or other. The concept of moral rights, on the contrary, is the crest of rational moral humanity. I use Kant's terminology here. Therefore, the term right to die seems to be an exemplary contradictio in terminis case, since it makes appeal to an impossible connection. It aspires to combine what is by definition irrational with what is the most remarkable offspring of rationality. Contrary to the above, in this short paper, I will argue that the right to die, this short presentation actually, I will argue that the right to die could be justified in the case of passive euthanasia as an autonomy related negative or liberty right on the one hand, or the solidarity-based positive or claim right on the other. And I'll explain the difference between liberties, claim rights, etc. Rights, regardless of their nature, to which whether they are discussed as legal, moral, human, or other, are either permissions or entitlements acknowledged to right holders, acknowledged to the right holder to do or to be done unto, or not to do something, or to be left alone. If I have a right, I am entitled to do or to be left alone to do something. Nobody has In the light of the above, the debate concerning the right to die obviously could never be about the fact or the event of death per se. Instead, what is actually debated is whether moral agents are entitled or should be anyway allowed to decide the time, the fashion after, and the circumstances in which they will experience their inevitable death. In other words, the proponents of the right to die claim that in their view, moral agents should be permitted or even assisted, this is also an issue that should be discussed, to die on the one hand when the continuation of their life would be against their will and their best interests, of course, and on the other in the most humane and least agonizing way possible, if this is what they wish. Suggesting a right to secure the above doesn't seem unreasonable at all. After all, we are all mortals, and it is only expected that we would have a strong interest in being allowed as much control as possible over our death. The establishment of a right to die would be uncontroversial if the debate was on suicide and not on euthanasia. But of course, not such debate would be on suicide. Suicide has no need of rights to remain an option for moral agents. The decision to commit suicide rests with the person concerned, and nobody has the power to prevent one from taking his life, at least under normal circumstances. With regard to euthanasia, however, the establishment of the right to die is of pivotal importance. The most morally significant difference between euthanasia and suicide is that the former, very much unlike the latter, requires the direct intervention of another moral agent. Therefore, in the case of euthanasia, to accept the right to die might only mean that moral agents, on the one hand, are perfectly justified to ask for our direct actions to see their life terminated, and on the other, that their request should be fully met by another moral agent, since all others would acknowledge a corresponding duty of theirs to respect such a request and respond to it. In other words, the right to die in the case of euthanasia appears to be a claim right. This is what sparks controversy among the proponents and the opponents of the right to die. In particular, and this par excellence applies to bioethicists that are under the influence of the Kantian tradition in ethics, any particular right could be seen as the offspring of a previously established corresponding duty on which the right in discussion is founded or based. Or, in accordance to Raz, I have a right if and only if some aspect of my interests is sufficient reason to hold another person to be under a duty. Here, please allow me to mention the Hoffelian analysis of right on which my PowerPoint presentation is based, not that much for the sake of this presentation, but mostly for the sake of the discussion that is probably to follow after the presentation. According to Wesley Newcomb Hochfeld and his famous classification of rights, rights are distinguished. Actually, rights are, as I already mentioned, entitlements. Entitlements to do or to be done unto something, or to be left alone to enjoy. Let's say enjoy. Okay, if we were talking about death, enjoyment is not, of course, the first word that comes in our mind, but let's use it. You see, we have claim rights that correlate the tabs below the first row. The second row includes correlative. The things correlated to the ones that are mentioned in the first row. Claim rights are correlated to duties. This means that if I have a claim right, I have a claim right only and only if somebody else or everybody else has a correlating duty to do what my claim right protects. Suppose that, okay, let's put it straight to the case of euthanasia. In the case of I have a claim right to being assisted to die, this would mean that each one of you should be under a certain duty to help me die, or to allow me to die by the natural course of my situation. Apart from claim rights that are certain entitlements, we have liberties or privileges, which means that a privilege is my, let's say, my entitlement to something that could be altered. I have the privilege to speak, to express myself, but this privilege is a lesser right, of course. You also have the privilege. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just looking for to turn off the conditioner because
To
it's
increase heating or
to breathe a bit. Znate ovdje
Ne znam da ga drže.
Sorry, will you fioci?
or probably open the window or something in the case it's not.
Sorry.
It's not working.
Sorry for interrupting.
So claim rights are correlated to duties, which means what I already explained. Liberties, my liberty to free speech, for example, is correlated to no rights. In the case I have a liberty, you have no right to stop me from enjoying my liberty.
Is it really the same, isn't it? If I don't have a right to prevent you to speak, isn't it my duty to?
No. Liberties are lesser rights. They are, let's say, bestowed upon...
But still, I have a duty not to prevent it.
Yes, but you can regulate it. Let's say that I have the liberty, let's take the liberty of free speech. This means that I'm entitled to enjoy freedom to express myself the way I feel or I wish, but I cannot insult you. In the case I insult you, you tell me, please, I have a claim rights not to be insulted. Liberties are that valid or effective as far as claim rights start. So you may have a claim right against my liberty to do something, or you have a liberty against my liberty to do something. I may have the liberty to smoke in public places, let's say, but you have the liberty not to be smoked into your face. So if I smoke in a public place, but I blow the smoke towards your face, you may tell me, and you're entitled, tell me please move a little bit further. I don't want to experience your smoke on my face. So it's a lesser right. The claim right is, let's say, unconditional. If I have a claim right to something, I have a claim right to something only and only if everybody else has a duty to abide by what is protected by this claim right. But
Excuse me, I have a problem with this Kantian. I had it from the very outset. Claim right shouldn't be the right that is connected with the duty in a direct sense, like let's say the right of a policeman to arrest someone. That right goes with the duty, not from the other side, but in accordance with his right, there is his duty to do that. He has the right to arrest because he has a duty to do what's his job. Claim right says that if I have a right, somebody's freedom is restricted by that, in the very strong sense that others have a duty to respect my right and not prevent me to exercise it. So, liberty is a lesser right, of course, but right to speech seems to be the... Okay.
Hopefully at the first place, I would say that the police not has a duty to arrest a citizen. A citizen has a liberty to his...
Offense is different case. I have a duty not to prevent you to exercise your right to speak.
Mm.
No.
No, no.
So the right to speak seems to be more than just neoliberal.
Limited. Yeah, exactly as it is with the right to freedom. Freedom is not an unconditional right. You are entitled to be free as long as you don't break the law or under specific. So it's not a claim right according to Hochfeld. It's a liberty.
Which are the claim rights?
Hmm?
Which are the claim rights?
The claim right is let's say that in a liberal democracy is the right to life. No,
Property.
you have
Property is
or property,
clear.
of course, yeah.
Yeah,
But
but-
property is also regulated by specific conditions. I mean, under specific conditions, in the case you go bankrupt, you don't have a claim right to your property.
No, I think the property is a right example. When I take a stick in a hiking situation, I take it, it's lying next to the path and I take it, it's mine.
Mm.
So at that moment the normative position of the whole world changes and everybody else loses the right to take that stick because it's mine. So it's a very clear case that property is accompanied to the duty of all others to respect my
Yeah. In the context,
regardless of any contracts and
Mm.
with written ownerships and the issue that I own what I own in the absence of when I'm not taking that in the hands.
yeah, property is a brilliant example of how this works. Allow me to insist in the context of liberal democracy, because in other monarchies, let's say, everything goes up to divine property.
As a Kantian, I have to confess here. When I take the stick, you and few of us, Despina, Misha, are walking on hiking, and being older than you, I feel tired and I see the stick and take the stick. It's mine, regardless of any liberal or whatever theory. That's Kantian point. Because if you try to take it from me, it will be offensive and disrespectful. And the duty to respect personality, which is not the thing, but person, is implying that you don't have the right to rob me from my stick.
You have a no right, let's say. Or,
But let's claim right.
yeah, the Hochfeldian analysis.
Regardless of any institutional background, it's a claim right in moral sense.
Yeah.
And I think Hochfeld might mean that by claim right.
This is the let's say the tricky part here. The Hochfeldian analysis of rights concerns only the structure of the rights, not their moral justification. So why do I have a claim right to do? Hochfeld cannot answer that. But since you have a claim right to that, this implies that everybody else has a duty. It's a structural, let's say, analysis. It's correlative analysis of duties and rights, etc. But the justification, as you very well pinpointed, is another thing. It depends to me. It depends on our ethicists but I'm not that popular in Athens for saying so.
But it's relevant for our main issue, euthanasia, or the right to die. Of course. Directly relevant.
Probably the next transparencies will explain this much better than I would know. A power is the ability or the entitlement to change one's condition, and this will be explained later on. If I have a power to do something, this brings liability to others to abide by that. I mean, the state has the power to alter my situation concerning my freedom. So I have a liability, or others have a liability to that power.
Professor grading students.
Professor?
Professor grading students.
Yeah. Students have a liability to by the procedure. Immunity, to me, immunity is the most important element in that analysis. Immunity is when somebody enjoys or has the entitlement not to have his situation altered by anybody else. We'll see later on. And this produces disability. If I have immunity to let's say, being killed, this disables everybody else, the states, etc., from having me killed. This is what we discussed previously. If I have a claim right, as stronger as my claim right is, the stronger is your duty towards me to respect my claim right. But this also implies that I cannot have a claim right to something in the case I have a duty to something. If I have a duty, but this goes without saying, of course. If I have a duty to arrest somebody, I may not have a claim right not to arrest him. These are opposites. And in the former transparency, hopefully this goes to, no. You see that claim rights and you see that they're correlated, but also in a negative sense. This is a much more detailed analysis of claim rights. You see that claim rights and duties, this arrow corresponds to duties, is a situation where A is protected from interference by B in relation to F. Let's say, you may suggest just an example yourselves, or against B's withholding of assistance in respect to F. This is tricky because the people who advocate the right to die as a claim right also insist on the duty of B to provide assistance in F-ing, which is being put to death. And the duty of B is under a correlative duty to abstain from interfering with A, from let's say, having his life terminated, or is required to facilitate A to F. To me, this is the stronger argument pro-euthanasia as far as the right to die is concerned.
It's connected with the position of physician, actually.
If the patient has a claim right to being left to die or to be facilitated to experience painless and less agonizing death, then the doctor should facilitate. It's another thing to let something happen, and another thing to facilitate something. Yeah, of course. And
this is all those debates about the abortion already, or euthanasia, which is if the doctors should have the right to abstain from that if they are wishing, for example.
And although we were still at the structural part of the right to die, of how the right to die is structured, I mean, and not in the justification part, allow me at this point to pinpoint that there's also a moral distinction between doing something or allowing something, facilitating something. Facilitate something means to help somebody.
Can you bring one page back?
No, this one page ahead.
Yeah, that's abstaining from interfering is actually allowing suicide as something that is legitimate.
Or passive euthanasia.
But requiring facilitated assisted suicide is much stronger than the first.
Legally, structurally, according to that part of the analysis, and also morally. The first, as Professor Babic very accurately pinpointed, is the first, letting something happen, is committing to act, is omission. The latter is commission. Consider this, we stay at a very nice place that belongs to the university, and there's a boiler in the room. I'm not quite sure because I have that let's say, minor psychopathy or psychopathic incidents occasionally, but I can't remember if we turned off the boiler, the water boiler. In the case we haven't done this, it's omission to do something. Of course, we didn't intend it to have the whole building explode, of course. So there is some, of course, we are liable for having done so. I am liable for having done so, but the moral assessment of my action is different. Consider the case in which I intentionally left the boiler on in order to have the building exploded and people killed. So it's a different thing to allow something to happen, and a different thing to facilitate. In the case, facilitation means involves doing something in order to bring about the effect of that.
This example you said is about purpose, not about active or passive.
Yeah.
Active
It correlates with.
It's not on the purpose. It's not. That's the purpose.
In the case you facilitate somebody's death, consider the case in which I'm connected with all these tubes and cables, etc. And I ask anyone of you to allow me to die. This means that you have to turn off the life support means.
I mean, passive euthanasia is something that doctor does not do on purpose. It's not.
In some cases. In other cases, it's shutting down the life supporting machines. In that case, you have to switch off.
On purpose.
On purpose.
Purpose.
Yeah.
Passive and active.
But from the other side, abstaining from interfering doesn't require presence of anybody else. You are doing that for yourself alone. What required to facilitate requires determining who is the one whose duty is to facilitate. I think that's very important part, because it can be connected with Kantian's duty to help, which is one of the most basic duties. It's restrictive, of course. It's not general. A duty to help is a moral duty, and is there a real need to facilitate? There might be a need to point to someone who is to help, and not from mercy, which is supererogatory, but from the duty. So
sorry for interrupting you. We spent half an hour writing that we maybe started something. Just let's try to give him the floor to explain the whole argument, and after that we will return to specific part, because otherwise we will miss the lunch, I think.
So sorry, but that's the most important part.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I enjoy this way of doing things. Giving a lecture is most of the times not that satisfactory to. If you get involved, I'm fully fine.
It's okay, but we
let's
have usual structure.
Let's see it through. Yeah, let's see it through. And
people who are not philosophers, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So having a claim right, I'll skip most of the transparencies. A's claim rights that F's is correlated to B's duty towards F to F, but also to B's duty towards A to facilitate F. This is the crucial point, as Johan remarked, and B's duty towards A to refrain from preventing A from fine. And this passive euthanasia that doesn't require the involvement of a doctor. The doctor just doesn't connect the patient to the life supporting means. It also means A's absence of duty not to F. I've highlighted this because it's not all the times. It's not all the times self-evident. Yeah. It's also in liberal democracy, but in monarchies it's not self-evident. In other states it's not as well. So, liberty and no right, you see the relation. A's absence of duty to abstain from F, this is a liberty. B has a no right this correlation. If I don't have a liberty, if I have a liberty to something, well, anyway, I mean, the transpires quite telling. Let's skip the explanations. Powers and liabilities. And this is the scheme. And immunities and disabilities. The Hofelian analysis of entitlements has many let's say champions, but it also have many who challenge.
Excuse me, I have to report. Power here doesn't mean pro power. As a power here is a normative term, not a raw term. It's not just a possibility to change.
No, it's according to this, that's power.
Yeah.
If you have immunity.
As a power of professor to grade students, that's a normative concept, not just a power, not a capacity. No? It's not a capacity; it's a normative.
Yeah. Good.
So there could be the capacity, but not power.
Yeah, it's the term that Popper uses.
Yeah.
There. And so here is a correlative table, and we discussed about it. What is interesting is opposition axiom. If you have a claim right, then you don't have a no right, and if you have a liberty, then you don't have a duty. This is quite interesting, but I think it's not very much related to what we're going to say later on. And concerning if you have a power, you don't have a disability. But if you have a disability, you may not have a power. This partially answers what you said. If you have an immunity, you can't have a liability, and vice versa. And this is it. This was the short presentation concerning the systematic structure of rights and entitlements hopefully provides. But hopefully doesn't say anything about justification, and to me it's an honest thing to do, because a legal expert is not there to provide justification. To me, the ethicist is to provide justification for legal norms. This means that, in my view, and this is what makes me unpopular to a part of my academia, a moral view precedes a legal norm, a moral norm. A legal norm is founded upon a moral norm. But I'm a Kantian guy, don't take me seriously all the times. So let's pass to the justification part. In Kantian terms, any duty is a voluntary, self-imposed and mandated by reason absolute obligation. And this is justification. To Kant, for Kant, reason is always justification from a moral duty. Then, with one short parenthesis here, duties may be justified upon reason, but rights cannot. And this is a huge discussion to make. Or it's much more difficult to found rights upon reason. Kant opts for basing duties upon reason and then producing rights. I mean, not Kant the same. In Kantian terms, any duty is a voluntary, self-imposed and mandated by reason absolute obligation. In brief, if I have a duty to do or to abstain from doing something, there will be no rational justification, not legal or of any other kind, no rational justification to opt for any other choice among those provided as alternatives in the given situation, except for what duty commands me to opt for. If I acknowledge a perfect duty of mine towards others to keep promises, this is what famous pardoned by Kant, there is no other rational alternative for me except to keep the certain promise I have given, although this might be against my best interests at the moment or contrary to what I desire. duty on this account is a self-imposed restriction of my instinctive nature. My instincts tell me, compel me to lie. But in the case, I won't repeat myself in the following. In the case I opt for lying, I choose to lie. I assume a world in where the notion of promise exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Because consider what would happen in the case that everybody would accept as a moral norm, as an axiom, to act according to this, to that premise that would allow us not to keep promises. Consider that for a moment that me and you and everybody in this world at the same time adopt as a premise, as a moral premise, as a moral axiom, as a moral principle, better, not to keep promises. What would happen? The thing that the world would become hocus pocus is something that is not of interest to Kant, but I would have the principle in my mind, my thought, that I shouldn't keep promises in a world that no promises would be given. Because if everybody accepts as a principle not to keep promises, nobody would promise anything to anybody else. So it's like abiding by, or trying to abide by the principle to hunt or to let's say acquaint yourself to mermaids. There are no mermaids. In such a world there will be no property, but I would still try to abide by the principle not to respect promises. This is irrational, something that to Kant is unacceptable. Well, my rational nature simply allows for nothing else save to do as duty compels me to, as far as I make my decision as a rational moral agent. To a rational moral agent, the only option available is to keep promises. Although every other aspect of his, let's say, of his entity might direct him not to keep promises. But as a rational agent, I'm only allowed to keep promises. Any right, on the contrary, is an absolute permission, entitlement, or freedom to do, or to be done unto, what it refers to. Mr. Please, you may put an end to this at any time. I mean, you know the...
Just go on.
Okay.
It's okay.
You know the schedule, and I know I'm out of schedule already. The moral right to my property, for example, means that I am allowed to dispose of my property as I wish. I am free to retain it, to quit it in favor of any beneficiary I choose to, or even to destroy it. Since the right to property is acknowledged as a legitimate moral one by the moral community I live in, other moral agents are obliged to abstain from any action that would disallow me to deal with my property according to my will, and this according to the Kantian analysis of duties. When it comes to moral rights, contrary to how it is with legal rights, concerning which there is unanimous consensus that they are bestowed onto persons by legal systems, the major issue of dispute regards their foundation. It is usually assumed that moral rights are based either upon God's will, or human nature, broad social consensus, utility, or pure reason. These are the 5 alternatives that are, at least to me, are the most favorable. To me, the only proper foundation of rights may be reason, since every other basis may only be dependent either on the idiosyncratic, ontological, or metaphysical views one adopts, or on individual taste. People should be acknowledged specific rights because God wants them to be acknowledged specific rights, or as bearers of an immortal soul, or on grounds of an evanescent social consensus, or just because it's much more useful to be acknowledged rights than not to. But since fundamental ontological, as such, as the ones I mentioned previously, and metaphysical premises are not unanimously accepted, while at the same time utility is not being agreed upon by everybody, nothing but pure reason, in my view, may serve as a proper found ground for asserting rights for moral agents. if you try to base rights upon transcendent gods, this is good for you and the people, for the people who this works for you and for people who believe in the same God, but not to me, since I don't believe in the same God, I may not believe in the same God as the one you believe in. But rights can only have indirect foundation on reason, as based upon, or better as deriving from, corresponding duties that are mandated by reason, so as to challenge or reject duties would be to challenge or reject reason, which is self-defeating, since one should make use of a reasonable argument, of a rational argument, to reject what the argument states or claims. In short, as far as the Kantian tradition in ethics is concerned, duties come first and rights follow. In that sense, I have a right to my property because and only because all other moral agents have beforehand already acknowledged it as a perfect moral duty of theirs to respect property in general, since not respecting it would imply that one assumes a world in which the notion of property at the same time exists and doesn't exist. If moral agents, it's exactly the same as what we discussed previously concerning keeping promises. If moral agents decided to act according to the maxim property shouldn't be respected, the notion of property would instantly vanish into thin air, but moral agents would still strive to conform their actions to the maxim not to respect property, which is utterly irrational, since property would exist as an idea in the intellect, but wouldn't correspond to anything existing in the real world. To sum up, any particular right that has no foundation upon a certain moral duty can be nothing else than flatus vocis. Roskelin, who introduces this term, meant something that I'm not allowed to tell you, but okay, it's a blow.
Flutter of the air.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The right to life, in that sense, is based upon the morally binding duty not to threaten, harm, or take one's life, no matter what. It is more than obvious that this duty is a negative one. It doesn't demand that moral agents should proceed to certain actions, but they should abstain from any action instead. It disallows me the right to life. It disallows me, for example, to shoot a guy to kill him. But it doesn't mandate that I should do something to save him from a hungry lion that has chosen him as a prey. Negative duties produce negative rights, and the right to life is an exemplary case, a right purpose to protect my life against the contrary disposition of anybody else. Next to negative rights that are based upon negative duties, or to use Kantian terminology, upon perfect or strict duties, there are also positive rights, and these are based upon positive duties, the one Kant refers to as imperfect or praiseworthy. Positive duties compel moral agents to act accordingly in order to respect these duties, and this allows individuals to raise certain claims towards others to act in such a way as the right holder is subjected to the actions that would facilitate him to exercise his particular duty. A positive, imperfect duty, like the one to solidarity, Kant mentions as an example of imperfect duties towards others, seems capable of supporting a positive right to solidarity. To Kant, solidarity, which is to respond to one's demand on grounds of, let's say, empathy or shared feelings concerning the human condition. That was a bit poetic. Solidarity is an imperfect duty, which means it's not morally binding. It's not compelling. It's not a compelling duty. Such a duty seems capable of supporting a positive right to solidarity. And as a matter of fact, bioethicists nowadays often bring forward let's say the duty, the rights to easy rescue, which means that in the case I may rescue you by doing something that is trivial to me and very easy to do, I have a duty to do so. If I was to just move my little finger and save your life, utilitarians believe that I have a duty to do so. I completely disagree with that. And since I have a duty to do so, you have a right to ask for my, let's say, solidarity, for my solidarity in order to have your life saved. Moving to the right to die debate, it is obvious that any right to die could only be positive and never a negative one, since one who asks for euthanasia, and I think that this goes without saying, if somebody asks for euthanasia, he asks for euthanasia, so he asks somebody to do something in order either to die or to be left to die. Since one who asks for euthanasia demands that the doctor or one's relatives act in such a way as to terminate one's life. Moreover, one who makes that claim actually claims as his right to be put to death. But if the right to die were to be seen as a positive right, this would mean that it should be based upon a previously established and agreed upon positive duty in the Kantian. Of course, if you abide by the Kantian analysis of duties and rights. However, this sounds absurd. Assuming a particular moral duty of the kind, I ought to put to death anyone upon his request, sounds like an extremely demanding project. Even if we consider such a duty a solidarity-based one, it would remain extremely controversial, since actively terminating one's life could never count as a proper means to express solidarity, at least not under the light of Kantian tradition in ethics. Solidarity has a continuous, let's say, essence. I mean, I express my solidarity to you now, and this means that there will be some moments in the future, at least some moments in the future, where my solidarity would be enjoyed. By putting you to death, it's a strange way, anyway, to express solidarity. Of course, in addition to this, expressing my solidarity in such a way, in the case of passive euthanasia, would violate the second formula of the categorical imperative, Kant's categorical imperative, that compels moral agents not to treat humanity, here I quote Kant, not to treat humanity, whether in their own person or in the person of any other, solely as a means, but always at the same time as an end. And of course, putting somebody to death or asking to be put to death in order to avoid pain, etc., means that you treat humanity in your own person, or the doctor helps you treats humanity in your person solely as a means and not at the same time as an end. All the above imply that in the case we accept the right to die as a legitimate moral right, this right couldn't be based upon any, either negative or positive, duty, therefore it would be just flatus vocis. Even if, for the sake of the discussion, we consider the right to die as a solidarity-related right, this would be futile, since the duty of solidarity, as long as it is an imperfect one, according to the Kantian analysis of duties, of course, is not morally binding. You are allowed to show solidarity at that instance, but not in the next one. You may give to one beggar a few coins, but you may skip the other beggar. Solidarity is not morally binding as an imperfect duty. To sum up, to admit the right to die to proper or typical moral rights, we should either consider it a positive or a negative one, to wit based upon a corresponding duty, a corresponding positive or negative duty. But the right to die cannot be a negative right, since it doesn't correspond to any negative duty, therefore it may only be a positive right. Yet it is not a positive right, since it doesn't derive from the positive duty, from any positive duty. In that case, it's not the right at all. Lisa, I'm only in the half of my presentation, but the time is, may I sum up?
May I interrupt you for one really selfish reason? I need to leave this meeting because
You need to, sorry.
I need to be on another meeting
Yes, yes.
in 15 minutes. So can I use my chance now to ask a question? Maybe it's the right moment. Actually.
Do you have like 5 minutes maybe that Evangelos sum up the argument?
Oh, okay.
Is it
It's a matter
okay?
of 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It is okay.
Okay.
I'll try to do it and
To
Thank
sum up
yeah,
the
yeah.
argument.
In less than 5
But the
minutes.
selfish reason was actually also related to my question. Then I will wait.
Yeah.
You will be the first one.
Okay, okay. All this I mentioned is my analysis, my approach to the right to die as either a negative or a positive right deriving from or correlated to a negative or positive duty in the Kantian sense, to me is outdated. And it is outdated. Of course, it's theoretically sound and in full accordance to what Kant describes in his foundation of foundation of
Physics of moral.
morals and the metaphysics of morals. But Kant lived 2 centuries ago, and back at the time, life ended when life had to end. I mean, you got sick and or you got a stroke or a heart attack and you just died. And nowadays the rapid advances and of course miraculous advances in medical technology many times produce a situation in which the patient is kept to something that resembles to a life. Nobody was actually, it is a life, so sometimes we have a irreversible coma or persistent vegetative state or something like that, and Kant was totally unaware of this situation as such. I think in the real world, in the real contemporary world, sometimes asking to be led to die has a meaning. It has a meaning, and it could be morally justified on many grounds, and on many grounds that are closely related to the Kantian tradition in ethics. Consider a case in which a person in agonizing pain is kept to life by artificial means against his will, against his best interests, only because the doctor wants to avoid being under a lawsuit that he let his patient die. At that case, the patient is used only as a means towards an end, and not as an end at the same time. The reason I will be kept in such a condition in life is only because my doctor wants to avoid a lawsuit and what comes after a lawsuit, the consequences of a lawsuit. So one point has to do with treating humanity in our own person, the person of anybody else, always at the same time as an end, and never only as a means. Another issue which to me is much more, and we may discuss about this. I only give a brief account of my thoughts here. Another point has to do with autonomy. If according to my free will, or better, and Kant seems to sympathize with such occasions. Consider a situation in which I suffer Alzheimer's disease, and I see my intellectual abilities deteriorate day by day, and I foresee, it's not hard to do so, I foresee that in a few months the doctors, of course, say that what I think is correct, that in a few months I will totally have lost my intellectual abilities. And I want to preserve my dignity in the Kantian sense of the term, and to preserve my dignity by autonomously deciding to terminate my life. Kant has, allow me just to read this brief passage. Kant has, in some passages of his Metaphysics of Morals, expresses some ambiguity concerning this. In the Metaphysics of Morals, he says, he writes, a man who had been bitten by a mad dog at the time the Alzheimer's was not that common or was not recognized as Alzheimer's disease. Kant refers here to hydrophobia. A man who had been bitten by a mad dog already felt hydrophobia coming on. He explained in a letter he left that since, as far as he knew, the disease was incurable, he was taking his life lest he harms others as well in his madness, the onset of which he already felt. Did he do wrong? These are the casuistic Fragian Kant poses. And in his lectures on ethics, Kant writes some unexpected things. In the cases where a man is liable to dishonor, which means deteriorating one's dignity or putting to threats for one's dignity, he is duty bound to give up his life rather than dishonor the humanity in his own person. It's almost unbelievable that Kant writes such a thing. For does he do honor to it if it is so to be dishonored by others? If a man can preserve his life no otherwise than by dishonoring his humanity, he ought rather to sacrifice it. I mean, Kant means his life, of course. He then indeed puts his animal life in danger, yet he feels that so long as he has lived honorably. To Kant's dignity, and dignity is closely connected to autonomy, dignity is quintessential. Life is not. I think that in the case of passive euthanasia, where somebody asks and begs for putting an end to his agonizing existence, Kant wouldn't disagree with. I suspect that Kant wouldn't disagree with accepting passive euthanasia as a moral option under the circumstances, of course. This was it. Sorry, I went out of time. Sorry, I think we do it.
Thank you. I'm Vesel Mitrovic from Faculty of Philosophy. So my question was actually regarding your comprehending of solidarity in this case. So, and the example with the little finger. So, I comprehend solidarity as a grade of altruism, let's say, if you could define in that way. So, helping someone in preserving his life, or not helping someone in preserving his life for a very selfish reason, is it justifies in your term of solidarity or not? As imperfect duty.
Yeah, I think what you have in your mind is a thick concept of solidarity. The utilitarians mostly refer to this thin utilitarianism seeks or pursues, let's say, a minimum condition for doing something. A condition under which not doing something is not justifiable. So the moving your little finger example is because moving your little finger means nothing for you. The sacrificing yourself in order to express your solidarity to somebody is, of course,
yeah, but regular.
Yeah, it's super erogatory act, as Professor Babich said but nobody is expected to act on grounds of performing supererogatory acts. You might be a hero or a martyr or a saint or anything else of the kind, and this is wonderful, but it's not the common moral agent. So this, this easy rescue, this right to easy rescue or the duty to easy rescue, that substantiates that's right, is not addressed to saints or martyrs. It's addressed to common moral agents. This means that if you see a beggar and you have 50 cents to spare and this would save the beggar's life, you ought to, since we discussed on duty, you ought to give the beggar 50 cents. And this of course would mean, if we accept the right to easy rescue, that the beggar should be allowed to ask you the 50 cents, of course bringing forth his right to take your 50 cents in order to, which is quite tricky and controversial, of course. I don't know if that's
that's enough, but like an example, should we be solidar with someone who wants to end his life or or the life of another person for who is responsible, like child or early embryo produced in IVF for very selfish reason, like dear self. Like dear self, it's a very selfish reason.
Well, so
I like too much for myself, and I can allow to first, like example, I produce two early embryos, and if you do that in IVF, we assume that both embryos have same right to life, of course. So the abortion is complete another story. So I don't want to mix those cases. And in one moment during the pregnancy, you or one woman decide to do embryo reduction for very selfish reason.
To keep on just one.
Not for medical reason, but just for selfish reason. Should we be solidar like doctors with that decision or not?
Highly controversial, but
because the parenting is also imperfect duty.
Yeah. How could you be
in some way, if you're looking from point of abortion?
My first objection here is that how could you be in a position to express solidarity? What would you do to express solidarity?
Do you perform embryo reduction or not?
This is not solidarity. To me, this is not solidarity. It's either a duty or nothing. I mean, or something according to personal taste. I mean, if I'm a doctor and I'm under a duty to do whatever my patients ask me to do, but I'm not sure that this is the case anywhere in the world. I mean, the doctors have...
It's the same case by euthanasia.
Yeah. Even in the Netherlands...
To be sympathetic with similar conditions.
Even in the Netherlands, the doctors are entitled or allowed better to reject this such demands and direct these demands to other physicians that are more sympathetic to these issues. I mean, you're not allowed to treat another person, humanity in another person as only as a means, but also in the face of yourself. Okay, and if you are first a doctor and secondly moral agent, it's quite treating your humanity as a means and rather than at the same time as an end. Doctors also have the option to choose. Okay. Just one word. Imperfect duties are in the eye of the beholder, according to Kant. Kant says that it's according to our nature to meet with these demands, with such demands, or to let's say, address our imperfect use according to our nature, not according to, not compelling by or mandated by reason. So his example is cultivating one's talents. It's according to your nature to cultivate your talents, and everybody would enjoy the cultivation of your talents, but you may not, and it's perfectly fine. If you live in a Mexican village, let's say, or something like that.
Thank you.
More questions?
And excuse for my early.
Thank you for being here.
Nice to
Nice to meet you too.
Hope to see you again.
Yes, me too.
I have a bunch, but we interrupted you, I think, with
No, it's okay. Let's go ahead.
go on, finish, you know, I don't want to be a rude.
No, you were not rude. Actually, we settled that. But the last, my interruption was regarding power and capacity. I have a power to grade students, meaning that my grades are valid. That's not the capacity, just the mere possibility. And there is the opposition that you cannot do that. That's something that I call sometimes Lockean error, mixing or not differentiating normative and factual level. I have the right to the life and nobody can take my life. That's not true. Nobody has the right to take my life, which is quite different. But I like your lecture very much, and I think it's it's brilliant in terms of seriousness and responsibility. And I say that with full responsibility of myself. I found in my own presentation 4 items regarding euthanasia of direct relevance, suicide, help, mercy, and pain. So pain is easy. Suicide is not that easy. So if you say that you may permit, at the moment you permit suicide as something that is legitimate right in someone, you open the door. But actually, not enough. You open the door very, very little, because assisting or helping is much more than allowing, and that is the crucial part. We have the duty to help. The duty to help is restricted actually only from the Kantian point of view, but I think it's so really that duty to help is restricted in moral sense only by one parameter, that is the higher duty to respect anyone else, including the one you're helping. So you are not allowed to help against the will of those whom you help. That, by the way, in a way refutes that political ideology or scheme, this possibility to protect. It's clearly immoral. It's not morally justified. So, taking that into account, that we have the duty to help within those realms that respecting others has been fulfilled, justified, that duty is actual duty. And I don't follow that distinction between imperfect and perfect duties. Duties are duties when they are actual, regardless of the matter if they are perfect or not perfect. And that's shown very clearly in many cases where imperfect duties are stronger than perfect duties. So it's just theoretical scheme. So the duty to help in matters of such high importance like dying is unequal in a way as a duty to issue what's the name of this? The certificate of death. So anybody has the right to the certificate of death. It's clear right. In that same sense, the duty to help may be allocated to some whose duty, official duty that is, which is very different from mercy, which is universal as supererogatory. So that's placing the burden on doctors, but that should be taken cum grano salis, actually. That duty to help might come to anybody who happens to be in the situation that that person is the only one who can help. But let me explain that in different terms. Let's say in my country there is a kind of very dangerous lethal epidemic in some part, and it should be fought off. So we have to send some doctors there. Who will are sending? Those who are competent, who are experts. So if there are 15 experts and there is a need for 5, we have the duty to make a procedure to select 5 among the 15. But if there is only 5 and there is a need for 5, all of them are having the duty to go there. That's clear. So if you happen to be in the situation to help someone who is dying, to die in a proper way, it's a kind of duty on the same level at which something that we didn't mention, I think I didn't mention in my lecture too, and that's the duty to die, which is actually consisting of two duties, the duty to die and the duty to die properly. And you cannot die properly if somebody who is obliged to respect you rejects the help.
First of all, I completely agree with you concerning the distinction between perfect and imperfect rights. To me, actually there is a huge debate on whether there is a real distinction between perfect and imperfect rights. Kant structured his rights theory, his duties theory, sorry, and I meant perfect and imperfect duties in such a way, but this is challenged by many people. There are indeed occasions during which abiding by an imperfect duty is equally significant or more significant than abiding with perfect duty. Kant puts it in a tricky way. He says that it's expected. I can't really recall now his wording, but he says it is expected as according to our nature to act according to an imperfect duty of ours. Concerning solidarity, he says that people who doesn't show solidarity robs himself of the hope that he will enjoy solidarity in the case he's in need of solidarity with other people. So the question here is, and this is what initiates and sparks the debate, the question is whether acting against your instinctive or let's say instinctive or against your nature would be a rational choice. Would be a rational decision.
That's the problem. You have to decide, not to calculate. If you happen to be there, you may be abhorred by the duty or the thing that you have to do. But your being abhorred is in accordance with the nature. Regarding the imperfect duties, actually the distinction is epistemological, not any further than that. The same issue we have in the case of dying. One issue is when that happened, the other thing, how we know that it happened. So perfect duties are much easier to know. It's like a very broad calendar through which many things go through. And beneath of that is a very narrow sifter, which is a sifter of imperfect duties. But perfect duties are also imperfect duties.
I think that the imperfect duties have to take into consideration our empirical state.
Yes.
And that's the problem. There's no transcendental.
Yes. Yes, exactly that.
It's the empirical cases that
And this is the tricky part. Can you take empirical decisions on transcendental grounds, of course, since they have to abide by this is getting quite technical, but I wish it's not that difficult or absurd. Can you take empirical decisions? Can you make empirical decisions on grounds of transcendent causes or reasons which neglect your empirical situation? I mean, am I entitled or justified, rationally justified, to rob myself? This is exactly what Kant mentions in his fourth example of due to solidarity. Am I rationally justified?
The empirical part is very, very important.
Of course, you can't take in vacuum decisions in vacuum.
If you see, for example, triaging the wheat, it's precisely so that you have different calendars or sifters, one upon the other, and those beneath are closer. So in the end, you get what you want, and that's empirically determined what you want, not something else. So the empirical part is a necessary part of it.
Yeah.
And it's not contained in perfect duties. Perfect duties are too crude.
To me, perfect and imperfect duties at least overlap with each other, at least. I cannot say that all of the times are identical to each other, but there are many times that they really overlap, and imperfect duties in a sense are perfect duties in that you cannot rationally decide to act against your own nature if you don't have transcendent good reasons to do so. I try to avoid the term transcendent reasons. If you don't have good rational reasons to do so, still robbing yourself from the anticipation that you will enjoy solidarity is not a reasonable choice. It is not a choice that would substitute a principle according to which your will would decide. The real question concerns
But can I just one more, and I won't speak any longer regarding the empirical and the issue of two embryos. He said Wesley said that he doesn't want to connect it with abortion, but how to do that? Actually, if you make a selection between two embryos before the 14 days, you may take it as an act of contraception, because up to 14 days there is no personal identity. But after the 14 days, there is no possibility in not treating someone who has a personal identity as a means, not as an end in itself. So it seems that it either has to be done quickly, or it has to be connected with abortion in all negative sense in which it means.
I agree. I'm very, very, very glad that my friend chose to omit to skip the abortion, the reference to abortion, because it's a very complicated technical issue. I mean, I don't know what is the threshold after which personality. There are many suggestions, but I really don't know when a person becomes a person. The question when a person becomes a person, according to Dan Broca, I think is relevant to the question when a cake becomes a cake. It's a bit cynical, but I don't know where exactly the cake inside the oven has become. If I'm a religious person, I have that answer, but if I'm a religious person, I don't have the dilemma that concerns abortion at all. So it's quite tricky.
But he cannot avoid collecting it under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that, please?
Wesley said that he doesn't want to connect it with abortion, and in my opinion, I said that he cannot avoid that connecting after 14 days, because there is capacity of personal identity.
Absolutely. I agree.
Before 14th day, there is no such, because of that.
In the legal sense.
Not in legal sense. Before that is metaphysical. Before that, there is that soul of omnipotence, which means that each cell has all information, and there is no one specific, not at all.
That's what I meant.
So you can broaden or extend that concept of contraception up to 13th or 14th day, and there is giving you a time span in which you can select between two embryos before that point, but not after that. After that it will be killing. Like any other abortion.
Unless you're a Christian, to you it's somebody may be metaphysical, but if you live according to it,
killing is annihilating a person.
Yeah.
Not a Christian there.
From conception on, and if you're a Stoic from the 14th year of your life, and I mean it's too complicated.
No, we may go in that sense by the way of skepticism and ask if all of us here are persons, or some of us are so much heteronomous that those who are such greatly heteronomous don't deserve to be called humans.
Yeah.
But that's too far. That's
the Kantian procedure, yeah. This way I said I'm
yeah,
happy.
of course.
I'm happy.
Of course.
You wouldn't refer to a person. That's what.
Still, if I killed that one that is falsely called human, because it's too heteronomous, without any character, any dignity, anything of that sort, obeying moral rules only from the fear of punishment, I'd still be liable, and
Yeah, of course.
That's, thank you. Yeah, I agree. Very good.
Then I will just try to add a couple of issues, but since we are kind of running out of time, we don't want to use it too much. Here, I have to remind you for my wish to just give us a brief overview of what is happening, what are the biggest issues in the bioethical, let me say, sphere in Greece nowadays, and how legally actually issues like abortion, euthanasia, or surrogacy, let me just emphasize them, are treated nowadays. I had before that, I also had one, I think, thank you anyway for a lot of lectures, and it's a pity that we didn't have it. I think it would be much easier for us if we would have it in written, because it's really very strictly argumentative, very interesting dialectic, if I may say, and how you actually exposed your arguments, and it's really very interesting. For example, this very not very often mentioned, but and I think controversial argument that actually you put it as if I'm right, that actually if the only excuse for the doctor not to assist in euthanasia is to respect the law, then he is some kind of, let me say, treating himself as an instrument humanity. So it's very interesting. We could debate quite a lot. But what I also wanted to, and Evangelos, we had these debates here. I'm very much concerned about because of our internal debates also, about the practical, let me say, outcomes of many of the positions we take and so on.
And political too.
And political as well,
No.
of course, social in many ways. It's a long, I will not take a lot of time on that, but what I'm thinking about is, especially with euthanasia, that in the country or in the societies like Serbia is, without any respect of the law, it's really very problematic if you would start with, let me say, universalizing that as a right and as a duty, corresponding duty to the physicians also to practice that and so on. For many ways, I mean, we don't have a lot of time, it would be abused in a very much problem. So what I was really thinking is, and I don't know how to define that as something, some position in between, let me say, Kantianism in one way or Christian approach in another way, and also in practical terms as a utilitarianism. When we were speaking and you were following actually the whole classical idea of universal right and universalizing. But I have this, and I will finish with that, say that the approach that, for example, Carl Schmitt is using for state of exception and dictatorship generally. So what he is trying to construct as a position is the way in which you should, and you are obliged as a leader, for example, to break the law sometimes for the purpose of protecting the system, and also he said to protecting the law in some way. So what I'm thinking in practical terms, that de facto, even in Serbia, in which we have let me say, strict protection of any euthanasia. In our criminal law, it is still treated as, how do we call that, act of mercy, killing, which is protected, and you could be indicted for 5 years, I think, if you are a practitioner for that. De facto, it is being, everybody knows, you know, pursued in some ways from our, how we translate, Univerzitet, our ER, for example, here, up to even some let me say, clinics and so on. So what I'm thinking, and I would just, if you could briefly comment upon that, and that's why I wanted to hear Greek's solution and some other, how to deal with that. I'm afraid that if you universalize that legally and de facto recognize possibility, that could, let me say, make bigger troubles than what you have now, in which it is normal, let me say, normatively forbidden, but de facto tolerated in some way. I just wanted your comment on that. Thank you, but once more, I'm sorry that we don't have more time for all of those arguments, which were really very inspiring.
Well, it's about a week. The issues are many and very interesting. We had this discussion a few hours ago concerning whether a leader or a ruler should not conform to the law, but not admit that he doesn't conform to the law. And this is a Protagoras incident that anybody should at least pretend that he's fair or just, and those who don't even pretend that they are just, they should be killed like a disease for the city. Because pretending that you are just means that you accept the legitimacy and the moral justification of the norm, and society can move on, etc. And at the time, I was totally for this view. Some things may. There was a president of Greece, former president of Greece, Konstantinos Karamanlis, who said that some things should be done and not told, and some things should be told and not be done. I was totally for this view, but in the meantime, while coming here, this brought to my mind the abortion case. Abortion was tolerated. This is toleration, or to tolerate euthanasia or tolerate abortion, to allow it to happen, but not to allow it being performed, but not fully legitimize it.
Or encourage it that way.
Yeah, and this has already been done, and we can't avoid looking back to the history. This has been done to the US, and it ended up with many, well, abortion back in the US in the 60s, I think, or 70s, before abortion was legalized in most states. Now, in the states that it's not illegal, people travel, so in order to have abortion, then go back to their states. In Bronx, the municipal authorities used to gather to pick up bodies of prostitutes from the corners and the sidewalks who had tried to abort themselves with umbrellas. wellness or things like that. And let's not forget about the let's say black market of abortion. If abortion is not openly legal and fully legalized, it should be taken into account. I don't say that but it should be taken into account. Let's say euthanasia. Let's tolerate it, but not overtly. Let's not legalize overtly. Where should it be performed? I mean, is it the same to perform euthanasia in your house by a relative or by a doctor, and the same in hospital? What are the means provided? The allies, not allies, the Nazi troopers, Nazi commandos had hydroxyanium pill inserted to their tooth because hydroxyanium was supposed to bring about, let's say, a peaceful death. It's quite the contrary. So the thing is, the question is whether to regulate, fully regulate something and provide strict determinants to see it being, let's say, carried out or performed or something, and the other is to in order not to produce turbulence to social ethics or relations, etc., to put under the I'm not sure, but we have to take into account historical examples on how things turn out when they were just being tolerated and not fully regulated. This is the...
Yeah, okay. Could you briefly give us some overview of
the situation in Greece? In Greece, I don't know if this, I know it's not the same in Serbia yet, but I know that soon it will be the situation. We're blessed with Bioethics Commission, the presence and the function of a Bioethics Commission, who is an autonomous commission, fully independent of the state, which is, for Greece, it's a very good thing. And this commission produces not fully binding, but let's say directing opinions. And these opinions are usually being respected by the state. So this Bioethics Commission of Greece happens to, it is very well structured. It includes people from the clergy, people from philosophy, law, psychology, etc. We don't have a philologist in this commission. So let's say the opinions that this commission produces are very much representative of what the Greek society would accept or is ready to accept, or according to some. So when it comes to surrogate motherhood, it's strictly regulated, but totally permitted. There is no objection, no moral objection. Actually, no striking moral objection against surrogate motherhood or IVF or. The thing is with euthanasia, my PhD happened to be on euthanasia back in 2002, and it's the only PhD in euthanasia since, which shows that the Greek society or academia is reluctant to discuss euthanasia, and it's obvious why it is that reluctant. Euthanasia is being performed in Greek hospitals, most of the time openly performed. But usually in terms of shutting down the life-supporting means, not in the form of active euthanasia. Yeah. This is a major problem because public health policies and public health systems are their budgets are very cut off. These days in Greece at least, this means that people are kept in kind of existence against their will or against the will of their relatives for a longer period of time, and the most important on grounds of moral justification is that, or moral reasons, that they die in agonizing death. So the discussion that has started a few years already now in Greece is whether active euthanasia should be favored against passive euthanasia and may be regulated. Passive euthanasia is regulated in terms of futile medical treatment. I mean, the doctor is entitled to shut down the life-supporting means by claiming that any further treatment would be futile. The same doesn't apply, of course, to active euthanasia because we don't have futile, discontinuation of futile treatment, and this is an issue. In the case of passive euthanasia, the patient dies in agonizing death because it dies out of suffocation, of intoxication, of anything of the like. It's an open issue. As far as abortion is concerned, abortion is in one way or the other legally permitted in Greece at any stage of pregnancy. For social reasons for the first 3 months, and for reasons that are connected with the health of the pregnant woman up to the end of the pregnancy.
Up to the end of the
Yes, where we have stillbirth, the baby is being born.
But that's universal. That's
Yeah.
universal.
Yeah.
Everywhere is now.
Just briefly, forgive me if it is self-obvious. I'll just come back to the last distinction you've made between tolerating and not overtly regulating. It's a very helpful distinction, and it is substantially founded in the empirical social world. Would you think that this is a domain or a dimension where a neo-Aristotelian concept of phronesis comes in and a sort of rehabilitation of Aristotelian ethics? Would you have any thoughts on that?
Actually, it's very closely connected. I mean, you have to be precocious, and this applies to both sides of the coin, isn't it? You have to think in advance of what is the outcome of his work.
Thank you. Because there's a very strong sense of the concept of phronesis being recirculated.
I'm not familiar with the Aristotelian tradition and virtue ethics, but phronesis, that's what do you?
It's very close to us.
Huh?
It's very close to us.
I'm glad to hear it. And the question I won't ask,
Please, but go on.
the question I won't ask because it could initiate a snowball effect here, and we're all aware of the times. I would like to go back to your very helpful exposition of Hoffel's table and come back to the claim vis-à-vis duty distinction. Of course, as you rightly say, if we introduce a metaphysical grounding of duties, say of B, and there is another B who refuses on rational grounds, on Kantian grounds, to accept those metaphysical duties as rationally bounding, we have a situation where the two can argue whether or not the other B's, the first B's, arguments are metaphysical, say theological. So I was wondering really, on what grounds could we, in a Kantian way, dismiss a Christian argument for instance, violating the duties side of the binary given that you've exposited first? Because there's obviously overlap of principles. One is a strictly naturalistic Kantian grounding of rationality, rational moral decision-making, and supposedly the other side is not. But if I may just draw in, for instance, Paul Tillich's very useful concept of theonomia. It's not only orthonomy, it's not only heteronomy. If we accept, if we accept, it is reasonable to claim that the human being is a imago Dei, and the practicing an autonomy in terms of rational freedom coincides with the Christological paradigm, which the imago Dei is a reflection of, substantial, not fleeting moment.
But we have to accept the view that the human moral agent is a human person's imago Dei.
Yeah.
If you don't, I mean,
If you don't,
if you think it's a
I just wanted to say,
yeah.
to see what, just a few reflections of yours. Forgive me for labouring this exposition. But the other side would claim that this is very rational, actually, to argue that we remain rational whilst at the same time claiming a theonomical approach to decision making. So that complicates the matter. It's not that clear cut. Although if you're a strict Kantian, it's I think thrown out of the forum a priori. And the paradox being that Kant is a Christian.
In some way.
Yeah.
He's a Stoic, so he's whatever Stoicism could lead him to.
There is a Stoic moment.
Kant
He's ambivalent.
Yeah, Kant quotes Thomas Aquinas in many instances without all of the times referring to his source. But
the source is, if I might risk to be wrong, I think the source of that in Kant is the Protestant scholastical legacy.
As far as other
Protestantism draws on scholasticism, doesn't eject it en bloc.
Yeah.
It's a reinterpretation of medieval Latin. So I think that's where he actually gets it from. Protestant dogmatic manuals or manuals on ethics.
Yeah, I have in my mind Kant's views on, let's say, sexual attitude, which are exactly as reading Thomas Aquinas, the distinction between crimina cardis contra naturam and secundum naturam, and the way he speaks of that, it's exactly like reading Thomas Aquinas. So, but famously Kant expels God from his moral universe. I mean, but I'm not sure, and many times we have a discussion concerning this in the University of Athens, how this this notion of reason, whether it is identical to some transcendent God or not, it is transcendent. Okay.
Exactly that. I have a comment. I think it can be explained in terms of autonomy. We often think about autonomy as something that could be called individual autonomy, based in desires or whatever a person wanted to. But actually, if from the Kantian point of view, it's not that. It's something that we can call principled autonomy. And in that sense, that imago Dei comes as a unified reason which is individualized in any person as the same that reason and instantiate, and that's showing that how to say that equivocacy between singular and universal, unlike particular, which is excluded. The only issue there which remains is that there is no necessary Christian reference there. It's just universal, what we call theonomy. Theonomy is very similar to what's principle autonomy.
I would agree. I would tend to agree, which makes the case.
But any religions, or maybe not any religion, but other religions could share that notion.
It's very interesting because we might find that looking back at Kant's teaching of transcendental schema, imitatio Christi is a transcendental schematismus, which is devoid of dogmatic substance. It comes back to this prototype of unified reason in action.
Yeah, but to do that you have to, how to say that, to make a philosophical concept, philosophical notion of what you call Christ. And there is a very strange and interesting point there. philosophizing Christianity and philosophically interpreted Christianity. Is that Christianity or is that something more, at least in part?
Let me
That's why I wanted to. That's why I drew our attention to this.
small addition to your discussion.
Please. Thank you, Professor. Go on.
In some way, my prediction is, if I'm allowed to prediction, is that Kantian ethics or Kantian tradition in ethics already is dominant in bioethics. In the years to come, since the societies are getting multicultural, and I mean, virtue ethics is not a normative theory at all. It doesn't provide specific norms, etc. And utilitarianism is very much silenced. It doesn't have this justification in something that is transcendental, etc. My prediction is that the Kantian tradition in ethics will become even more dominant or fully dominant, at least in the field of bioethics. One could say that it's religiously neutral, if I'm allowed the term, a religiously neutral approach to bioethics. Since it's founded on reason, regardless of the fact that reason sometimes resembles God. Okay, it's not overtly, let's say, theistic, but it seems to be religiously neutral. And if reason, but I have many doubts concerning this. I don't know if you're familiar with Tristram Jr. I'm not sure that reason means the same thing for every cultural setting. But if it means Kant is the most neutral option we have to provide regulations with, let's say, ecumenical character, etc. Equally valid for a Hindu and a Christian and a Platonist or Aristotelian, etc.
If you allow, I would then say that it is possibly, for the time being, the best operative model to include both inclusiveness, that's a much stronger word, of course, than just neutrality, and normative competency, Kantianism, in regard to the two mentioned major traditions of doing ethics, utilitarian and virtue ethics.
Please, there's a question. I missed
No, I'm just this is just a comment.
I still missed the first part.
So I'm saying that the Kantian model, I'm just following up on your input here, in the future to come as an operative model for dealing in bioethical burning issues, is a very fortunate model in the sense that it can integrate not only neutrality but even a sense of inclusiveness.
Yeah,
And
I
at
totally
the same
agree.
time keep the normative competency or competency for making stronger claims or norms in regard to the two other traditions.
I totally agree with that. And I would add that the Kantian approach to bioethical issues sets low standards for moral agents. And this is why it's much more preferable to the utilitarian tradition. The utilitarian tradition, its standards are quite high. I mean, I have to be a saint or a hero to be a good utilitarian, but I have to be a normal person, not just a rational human being. What Kant refers to as rational moral humanity, in order to be a good Kantian. So, in my view, my prediction is not a prediction. Actually, it's something that has already been happening. The Kantian ethics will be dominant in the field of bioethics. It's easy and affordable and neutral, and everybody can abide by it. It's okay, why not?
I just wanted to mention that actually it's 2 hours already.
So sorry,
So I think about
we've been carried away, which is a good
thing.
I would say, but
To
this is
me,
regular here, even with, if I could say, much less philosophical issues like this one. But in that sense, I just wanted to stop here, not to torture the other people. But I think that several of us could continue with a drink here and go on with that. So I would ask our mediator to tell us.
do something.